I'm Isabel Miller and welcome to Kent Talks. We're joined by world-leading researchers to discuss how scientists are motivated in the modern world and how useful are they to our society. Well, here with me today is theoretical physicist Dr. Jorge Quintanilla, Dr. Jenny Tullet, a bioscientist, Professor Gurprit specialises in neurosciences, and Dr. Maria Alfredsson is in the field of chemistry. We're also joined by an audience from across Kent who we're looking forward to hearing from in a bit. So we'll start off with our first question today. Can you tell us a little bit about your research specialty, Jorge? Let's go.
Of course, yes. I am a quantum physicist, so I'm interested in quantum mechanics. Now, normally this is something that describes the behavior of very small particles like electrons, but I'm interested specifically in quantum materials. So quantum materials are substances you can hold in your hand. They are life-size, they are on the scale of ordinary objects you would encounter, but still their properties have to be described by quantum mechanics. Suppose you have a particle like a tennis ball. I can throw it at a wall and it will bounce back. Now imagine my tennis ball were very, very small, so it's like an electron. An electron, you can bounce it against a wall and turn up on the other side. Now, ordinary particles don't do these things. And whereas we don't yet have a quantum material that would actually traverse a wall like that, we do have quantum materials that can be in two states at once. So they are doing two things that would be mutually exclusive. Like, for example, it could have an electric current going this way, or both at the same time. And this is something that a tennis ball cannot do, but quantum materials can do that.
I'm interested in the biology of aging, and obviously aging is something that a lot of people have an interest in, either from their own perspective or from watching other people around them. And it's really important from a biological point of view to understand why it is we age and what it is that might be able to control these processes, because the hope is that if we can understand this, it means that some of the less desirable things that happen as we age, so age-related disease, for example, we may be able to intervene in those processes and actually try and make people age healthier and have a longer life for a lot longer period of time. And we know from the science that's out there that actually it's possible to change the way we age. So you can change genetics, you can change the environment that someone's in, so you can change how much they eat or what they eat even. And you can also take different supplements and things like that, and that can also improve age. So my research takes me in all sorts of different directions. Traditionally, I'm a geneticist, but I'm also now interested in much more of the environmental factors that affect how we age.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah, hi. So I'm a neuroscientist. I work on the part of the brain which is termed the circadian clock, which is in essence your biological clock that regulates your behavioural cycles, such as your sleep-wake patterns, but also hormonal and physiological patterns. So for instance, it's the clock which actually tells your body when to digest food, when to sort of process other circadian things, like sort of waking up, your alertness, and these kinds of aspects. So what we're doing now is actually looking at how your sleep-wake patterns can actually impact in your mental health. So we all know what it's like when you've had a bad night's sleep and how we feel. So we can now start to look at how actually that can actually potentiate some of the effects in mental health, or actually get into the cycle where the mental health is actually affecting sleep patterns and you're in that vicious cycle. So we're looking at how the brain regulates those aspects and how we can devise different kinds of treatments which can actually aid and sort of help in some of those ailments.
Lovely, Maria.
Yeah, and I'm interested in materials for energy. So I'm worked in departments with environment, so environmental sciences, and that took me into work with energy materials. So what we are trying to do is actually to make energy storage, so lithium-ion batteries, which you are probably all aware of, that you have in your phones, in your computers, in cars. And we're trying to use more environmentally friendly materials because a lot of them are quite toxic, but they also use a lot of plastic waste. So we are trying to see if we can find materials where we reduce the plastic waste, for example. And this is particularly important because our main application is not your cars, it's wearable electronics. And in wearable electronics, we want to use the battery once and then we want to throw it away. That creates a lot of waste. So we need to find materials that are sustainable and that we are not polluting the earth.
And why are you all scientists? What motivates you all?
So I guess I've always been interested in science as long as I remember, but at the risk of sounding like a huge nerd, I'm going to tell you how I got interested specifically in physics. I was 14 years old and I was into role-playing games, which have these rule books that explain, you're in a battle and you throw an arrow, so you throw some die and you look up in the rule book whether your arrow reached the target, and I was fascinated by this sort of thing. And then I had a high school teacher who explained to us the laws of mechanics, the simple laws of how bodies move, and explained that there's mathematical equations that you can use to predict where a tennis ball will land, which you can then do experiment and tell you exactly where the tennis ball lands. And then I realized there's actually a rule book for the universe. And this was amazing. So I wanted to learn that rule book, and therefore I had to become a physicist.
I had a professor that taught me orbitals when I was in my first year of chemistry, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So I decided I wanted to stay in science and I wanted to find out more. So I would say curiosity.
Lovely. Gurprit, what motivates you as a scientist?
I guess it's every day is not the same when you come into work, but it's also the things that you're working on are the most advanced and the newest things that you can actually sort of find. So when you're actually discovering things in science, you could be the only lab working on this project in the entire world. And so anything that you then discover is new.
I think I can relate to both what Gurprit and Maria were saying. I mean, I think every day is basically like a new biology lesson for me. I loved biology at school. That's why I took it for A-level. I wanted to do a degree in it just because I just really liked it, to be honest. I just found it interesting. Everything was new. I was learning all sorts of new stuff. At that point in time, I was just learning stuff out of textbooks. And then gradually, as you go through, you start to read, more individual research papers from other scientists. And then you start to meet those scientists yourself at conferences and things like that. And you're always learning something new.
And what is the difference between curiosity-driven and applied research?
Well, curiosity, I think, is a basic human instinct. We all are born curious. Even a baby will be curious to find things out. You give them a toy and the first thing they do is they turn it around to see what's inside and so on. So I think curiosity is just not something that's optional. It's something we have built in. Now applied, for example, you might develop a new way of making art, and then it's about beauty, which is also a human craving. Or you can find a way of generating energy more efficiently, and then you keep warm, which is another basic human. So I think when you do science with an application in mind, you're doing it for something else. When you are doing blue skies research, you are just motivated by a basic human instinct to be curious.
And some people might not realise that actually a lot of research is funded by taxpayers, for example, and the government. So how important is it to consider the public when researching science?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think we have accountability as scientists. If our work is being funded by the government, whoever funds it, we have accountability to that authority. And I think what we do need to do is the research that we do can be quite complex to explain. So we do a lot of things like outreach events where we're actually bringing our research to the public. So actually showing the public exactly where the money is spent. So for instance, the kind of work that we do looking at sleep and mental health, we'll do stuff at, let's say, the gene level, but then we translate that up to sort of put out short articles, or when we go out to schools to present our data to show them, or we go to research conferences, things like that. So we are doing stuff to then outreach to wider audiences, not just to the science community themselves.
Yeah, and impact has been a really big focus in recent years. Maria, do you think that means that blue skies thinking is maybe at risk, or do you think there's a place for both?
So I think you can't go without, one can't live without the other. They are both as important. I think that the research has changed towards, or funding has changed towards applied funding more and more. Also because a lot of the funding is not only government funded, it's also private sector funded. And a lot of industry used to have their own research labs, but that has been transferred out to university now. So we have a liability both to the private sector, but also to government funded. A lot of the ideas that is coming from blue sky has driven the applied sciences. But saying that, I also would like to say that applied sciences also triggers blue sky
Absolutely.
research. So the one can't be without the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and there are great examples. Like, for example, when we had the first quantum revolution, which is when we invented things like semiconductors, that led to microchips, which led to computers, mobile phones, and all that. But also, there was a semiconductor industry that were able to fabricate much cleaner materials than were feasible before. And that led to new discoveries, like something called the quantum Hall effect, which is now used to define some of the fundamental units with which we measure everything. That was a fundamental physics discovery that would never have come without the applied science that came from other fundamental discoveries, like the discovery of quantum mechanics. So there's a symbiosis, there's a back and forth between blue skies research and impact applied research. One cannot live without the other.
Well, we'll be right back to discuss more about science and research. We will see you after the break. Welcome back to Kent Talks, where we're discussing science and research. So let's get some audience questions.
Jenny, you mentioned you and your colleague were looking into certain berries and fruits and how they affect our bodies as we age. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So it is really cool actually, because the idea that you can eat something that will automatically make you healthier and live longer potentially is obviously very attractive to a lot of people. And I should just premise what I'm going to say with saying that what I'm going to suggest eating is not going to drastically extend your lifespan, at least at the moment. But the one berry that Marina and I have been studying are cherries. Inside cherries, they've got this beautiful red juice. Yeah, they're a nice red colour. And they're red because they produce this chemical called anthocyanin. And it's that anthocyanin that has health properties. And we're trying to understand what the health benefits could be and how these could actually translate all the way up to humans.
You are scientists, but I wonder, what do you think about blue sky research in other disciplines?
So I guess this is a valid question, but it does presuppose that you can always distinguish what's blue skies and what is not. And actually, I think it's much murkier than that. There's some applied research that then has fundamental implications, some fundamental research that then turns out to have an application. So you might say, I don't know, studying the literature of some other country maybe is blue skies, but then what if, I don't know, the foreign minister wants to talk to someone who understands the culture of that country before they go to a summit, and there are no academics in this country that understand that culture. So from that point of view, it has applications. So I think it's very important in all areas of human endeavor, or generally, to try to be diverse and try to cover all the points of view. And I think if in some fields, most of the time, the motivation is the fundamental knowledge, then, well, that's the feature of that field. That doesn't mean that field is any less valuable. It might become very, very valuable in unexpected ways.
It might be quite a big question, but what is the piece of research that you're most proud of doing?
We did quite a lot of research over COVID to develop a battery for running COVID tests. When you do a COVID test, you get a color code if you are positive or negative. Instead of using colors, you can use electronics, and that can go straight into your mobile. And you get not only if you're positive or you're negative, but you also get the amount of proteins, it is in this case, that you are producing if you are positive. So you know if you have a lot or if you have a little. And this test cannot run without the battery. That battery, because it has been in contact with human fluids, obviously needs to be thrown away. So we developed a battery that is environmentally friendly and that you can dispose of and that you can run your test with. And it's all sustainable materials, so it's water in principle.
If we have been getting more and more money going to applied research rather than blue skies research, have we got the balance right at the moment? And since we only have a finite pot of money that we can take from taxes and people want to use from taxes, how do we decide what the right balance is?
I guess what I've seen is if for my personal work, it has become much more applied, and I've gone where the funding has been, I guess. So initially when I started, you could, work on, so as I said before, I work on the circadian clock in the brain. We could say, right, we're going to look at this cell, we'll look at the genetics in this. And if we jump forward now, we're very much looking at, okay, right, so if we do this, what is the impact in terms of treatment, the clinical aspects of it? So there is that push definitely to be more based around looking at treatment, especially the stuff I work with, sort of treatment pathways, trying to solve real life problems, patient benefit, what will be the benefit to society in general by doing this research?
There is still quite a strong appreciation, though, I think, for basic science, at least in some of the funding streams that are out there. I sit on some of the panels and, you see some amazing fundamental science proposals come through and they are appreciated for what they are. And I think as long as scientists keep speaking out about the benefits of that type of research, and I think, and we should just keep supporting that kind of work because it is out there and there is some money available for it, but I think we just all have to keep pushing away at that.
What worries me is that it's a bit asymmetric. So if we stopped funding applied research and we only funded blue skies research, assuming you could really distinguish them, you would soon know, because from the fundamental research, we would know about all these wonderful technologies that we could have, but we don't have. But if you do the opposite, if we were funding too much applied research but not enough fundamental research, we might not even realize, because we wouldn't know what we are missing. We wouldn't know what would be the technologies we could have that with more fundamental research we would have had. So we could actually blindly go into more and more applied, thinking, well, we're getting more out of the research this way, and actually cut off eventually the source of technological innovation. And yes, 20 or 30 years, that's sometimes a conservative estimate. Sometimes it takes even longer. So I would say one has to try to be balanced.
Yeah, and I mean, considering that a lot of research is taxpayer funded, do you feel like there needs to be sort of more transparency and communication with the public in terms of what they want in research, for example? For example, I didn't know actually how much the taxpayer contributed towards research,
So in a way, applied research drives society. It drives technology, it drives medicine. We have seen COVID is a applied science. And of course, government needs to drive economy, and that is where applied science is coming into a big deal.
And there's other ways public give money as well to research, perhaps they can donate to charities. So there are, in the biological sciences in particular, there are charity grants that you can go for. I think probably one of the biggest is Cancer Research UK. Everyone's done the 5K for Life race and things like that. All that money, or a good chunk of that money, gets channeled back into research projects, either at universities or research institutes around the world. They fund PhDs, they fund postdoctoral research, and they're looking for cures for cancer. But it's effectively, it's scientific research. And some of that will be basic and some of it will be a bit more applied, and it was probably quite a mixture actually. And there's lots of different charities for lots of different illnesses, disease states, everything else. And so public funds research through that route as well as through taxpayer money and the government, and specific funding streams.
Yeah. Do you think the public needs to be a bit more involved? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there will. Well, actually, funny you should say that. We were just recently at the Wellcome Trust meeting where actually in terms of lived experience, that kind of element was a huge part of that. So it's actually getting the public to actually inform your studies. So what they do want is focus groups where, for example, it's easy if you're working in terms of looking at something like mental health, you'd have individuals who are suffering from those conditions at different stages to form a group and then inform your studies. Yeah, so they're directly asking us, how have you involved those patients in your study, and how has it actually changed from what you thought was before, their input, how has that developed? And they want to see that change. What they don't want to see is that actually we were perfect from the start, because chances are you weren't. So they want to see that development going through, and I was surprised at how much weight was put on that particular workshop that we did. So I think patients informing science, or people informing science, the general public, is the way things are moving, and we're being held more and more accountable. But having said that, when we do apply for grants, there's a huge section on dissemination. You know, so okay, once you've done your findings, how are you going to distribute it not just to the scientific community, but the general public? So there is lots of thinking around that, and funding bodies do also have awards for dissemination. So if you wanted to set up a stand, let's say at the Science Museum, about the stuff that you're doing, you can apply for funding to do things like that.
Mm-hmm. And just, you know, finally, because we've run out of time, what do you guys think is the future of research? What kind of things should we be thinking about in terms of, say, ethics, or, you know, the next big discovery, for example?
I think the huge thing that's happening now is this second quantum revolution. So I truly believe that this will not only be a huge technological revolution, but also gives us the chance to make fundamental new discoveries. So I think that's the huge thing.
So for ageing biology, what I think we might see a lot more of is preventative medicine. So when you go to the GP, they're going to be very interested in your lifestyle and, you know, the things that you do that we start to learn about that will help you age better or be healthier as you age. We're already seeing that now, but it will be the fundamental work that we've done, you know, in the laboratory, where we understand which molecules and everything else that are guiding the aging process that basically dictates that kind of preventative approach. So, you know, whether someone's prescribed a supplement to perhaps, you know, activate a particular signaling pathway and make them healthier, or whether they're prescribed a particular diet or sleep interventions, or whatever it is that's going to improve their lifestyle. And I think we'll see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I guess for me, in the kind of areas I work in, I think it is the wearable devices and the AI type technology, looking at sort of physiology and behaviour, especially in the areas of mental health. So I think getting all that information and working in those kinds of algorithms to sort of predict health outcomes, and I guess as Jenny was saying, preventive medicine from that. So using sort of wearable technologies and putting that together so that they can give a holistic overview of an individual's physiological state, as it were.
I'm on the AI as well, and I think it's going to change the way we are thinking. I think we are going to do exactly what Jorge said. We are going to have data-driven, if I call it, information, where we are not using necessarily human knowledge and expertise, and when we are taking decisions, computers are taking decisions from automated algorithms that we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you to you all and our experts for a wonderful discussion. Thank you to our audience and to you for watching. Join us next time for another Kent Talks.